I moved to the edge of the countryside for a reason. Peace, space, and absolutely zero nonsense. My property sits on a spacious 20 acres of wooded land, just beyond the jurisdiction of the local HOA controlled community. That little boundary line has caused more drama than you'd believe, especially with one person in particular, Karen. You see, Karen is the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She acts like her influence extends beyond the legal boundary, constantly poking her nose where it doesn't belong. Her motto might as well be, if I can see it, I control it. Our first real clash started when I built a simple but sturdy privacy fence and posted signs that read, private property, no trespassing. She called it an eyesore and claimed it blocked the natural community view. Mind you, the fence was a good 100 feet from her property line. Now here's the kicker. I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. I have all the legal permits to care for certain protected species. My prized residents? A legally owned, rehabilitated breeding pair of gray wolves named Ghost and Ember. They live in a massive, secure, fenced-off section of my property, over an acre in size. It's well hidden from sight and soundproofed enough that you'd never know unless you were snooping. Which, of course, Karen was. She overheard me talking about my work with wildlife at a local co-op event. Her eyes lit up like she'd found the motherlode of HOA violations. She even tried to report me to animal control. The officer came out, took one look at my permits and enclosures and said, "Looks like you're more compliant than most zoos." Karen was not pleased. That should have been the end of it, but nope. It was a sunny Saturday when the real chaos started. I came back from a quick supply run to find a dozen folding tables, dozens of balloons, 3 grills, and over 50 people picnicking on my property. Kids were running wild, music was blaring, and there was even a bounce house on my backfield. I was in shock. Before I could say a word, Karen, wearing a floral sundress and sunglasses big enough to land a plane, strode up like she owned the place. "Oh, you're back early. Don't worry, I told everyone it was fine. You weren't using the land anyway, and we needed somewhere scenic. This is a community event after all." I stared at her, stunned. "This is my land, Karen. You're trespassing. All of you." She waved dismissively. "It's just grass and trees. And besides, you didn't put up enough signs. We figured it was shared space." I pointed directly at the huge no trespassing sign right next to her buffet table. "Karen, you and your guests need to leave now." She crossed her arms. "We're not going anywhere. You can't gate off nature." Now, I could have called the sheriff right then and there, but I had a better idea. See, Ghost and Ember's enclosure is on the far end of the property, a couple hundred yards from where the party was happening. But with that many kids wandering around unsupervised, it was only a matter of time. So I calmly said, "All right, Karen, but don't come crying to me if someone sees something unexpected." I went inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up the security feed. Sure enough, 2 boys, maybe 12 or 13, had wandered past the field toward the woods, right up to the edge of the wolves' enclosure. They weren't in danger. My wolves are enclosed properly, but the sight of 2 100-pound apex predators tends to make an impression. Within seconds, the boys were sprinting back toward the party, shouting, "There's wolves in the woods!" Panic ensued. Parents were yelling, grabbing kids, tripping over lawn chairs. Karen was shouting at everyone to stay calm, but someone knocked over the grill, setting fire to the tablecloth. Another woman called 911 screaming, "There are wild wolves attacking the picnic." By the time I walked back outside with a calm smile, the sheriff had already pulled up, same officer from animal control. He stepped out of his vehicle, saw the chaos, then locked eyes with me. "Let me guess," he said. "Karen?" I nodded. "They broke onto my land for a picnic." The officer sighed, then walked over to Karen, who was now covered in barbecue sauce and trying to shove a folding table into a minivan. He said, "Ma'am, did you receive permission from the property owner to be here?" Her eyes darted. I assumed it was community land. He looked at the huge sign again. You assumed wrong. And then he pulled out his citation pad. Karen looked like a deer caught in headlights as the sheriff issued her a citation for trespassing and reckless endangerment. Parents were still trying to calm their kids, pack their picnic gear, and wipe ketchup off their designer handbags. I stood there, arms crossed, watching the spectacle unfold with my security camera still recording everything. But that was just the appetizer. Karen tried to talk her way out of the ticket. He's just doing this to get back at me for a misunderstanding. We thought it was public land. And anyway, he has wolves. Wild, dangerous animals. The sheriff didn't even flinch. Ma'am, the man has full state and federal licenses. You're trespassing and hosted an unauthorized event on private land with kids running near predator enclosures. You're lucky nothing worse happened. Karen huffed and turned on me. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I smiled. Good. I'll be forwarding the footage to mine. By evening, the last of the guests had left, Karen's tables were gone, and my property was littered with trash, broken lawn chairs, and forgotten shoes. I took photos of everything and emailed it, along with the security footage, to my attorney. Now here's where Karen made things worse, again. She filed a complaint with the HOA claiming my property was a public safety risk and that my wolves terrorized her community picnic. She sent a letter to every homeowner on her street warning them that I was harboring dangerous animals and was a threat to peaceful neighborhood living. That's when I dropped the hammer. See, the HOA might be loud, annoying, and occasionally nosy, but they're also very by the book when it comes to legal issues. And what Karen failed to remember was that I sit on the Wildlife Enforcement Advisory Board. I have state backing, city contacts, and friends in code enforcement. Within a week, I filed a formal complaint against Karen for criminal trespassing, criminal trespassing for drift injuries or surcharges. Repeated suicide of trespassers extinct. Criminals trespassing territory. Criminal trespassing bush was disworth, it betrays. Terrest is a virtue to parfait. Illegal dumping on private land. Filing false reports with law enforcement. Enforcement and a blank for the buyer self. Enforcement. Hiring sports with law enforcement. Job reports and reports law enforcement. Interfering with a licensed wildlife facility. Her neighbors weren't happy either. Turns out, several of them had no idea she threw a 50-person party on someone else's land. Once they saw the footage, courtesy of a neighborhood group I shared it with, they turned on her like piranhas. And remember those panicked 911 calls? The county charged her with misuse of emergency services. She tried to fight it, but her own voice screaming, "There are wolves attacking children," didn't help her case. But here's the final twist. The Hill Board, fed up with her drama and mounting legal problems, called an emergency meeting and voted Karen out of her position as HOA president. They cited her reckless behavior, liability concerns, and repeated harassment of non-HOA residents. Her $1.3 million house? Turns out the HOA has the power to issue escalating fines for violations tied to public safety. With the citations stacking up, she couldn't sell the home without resolving the liens. Eventually, she had no choice but to rent it out and move away in shame. As for me, she was like the Shakespeare Sarah for viewing. Nothing can express this than fines for me. I cleaned up the field, reinforced the perimeter fencing with new motion sensors, and installed an updated private property, wildlife under protection sign, featuring ghost and ember silhouette. Funny thing happened a few weeks later. A neighbor I'd never spoken to before brought over a casserole and said, "We're so glad you're here. The wolves are the quietest neighbors we've ever had." Karen might have tried to turn my property into her personal picnic park, but in the end, the only howls left in the neighborhood were the ones coming from our wolves, content, well-fed, and safe behind a fence that not even Karen's entitlement could get through.